Hey everyone, how are we doing? So today we're going to be setting up a Caridina tank, and it's not going to be anything wild or crazy. This is more just a video of showing you a really basic Caridina breeding setup. So let's get straight into it. So this here on the left is the tank that we're going to be setting up. I'm pretty sure these are 19 litre tanks, but I could be wrong. They might be 21 litre. First things first, let's give it a little clean down. Now this tank will be orientated so that you see the shorter ends of the tank, just so it can fit on the rack better. Now one thing to consider if you're setting up a shrimp tank is always the size of it. Now, like I said, I am using something around 20 litres here. I'm pretty sure it's 19. You can do shrimp in a 19 litre tank, absolutely. But it's just worth considering that it will be a bit more demanding than a larger tank, say like a 40 litre. And that's because there's less water in there to dilute any buildup of toxins, ammonia, nitrites, nitrates, and other things too. So a larger volume of water is always easier to maintain. So if you do have the option to go a little bit bigger with a shrimp tank, then I'd always recommend it. It means that you can have more shrimp in there as they breed as well. And it makes that stability, which is always key with shrimp, makes achieving stability a lot easier. However, if you've been doing it a while, if you're used to shrimp tanks, if you know what you're doing with them, then I mean, you can do it in 15 litre easily. 20 litres is a good roundabout size, but like I said, if you're a bit newer or you don't keep a lot of shrimp already, then try and go for something like, I'm going to say maybe around 40 litres, sort of a sweet spot. I think 40 or 50, I see a lot of people breeding in 50 litres, but again, not to say that you can't do it in these. That's all wiped down. We don't need to go too mad. It wasn't dirty anyway. Had some watermarks on it from the tank next door. The next thing we're going to do is add our soil in, and because it's a Caridina tank, we need to use an active substrate. The reason we use an active substrate is because it helps us to keep the pH down. The one we're using here, this is Shrimp King by Denelay. Now when you combine an active soil or an active substrate with reverse osmosis water, the nutrients in the substrate allow the water to be buffered downwards to give you a more soft and acidic water. And that's exactly what you need with Caridina shrimp. So this helps us get to a pH of around about 6, which is exactly what we're looking for. Caridina shrimp, they're going to want parameters of anywhere between 5.5 and 6.5, but 6 or lower is always better. They're going to want a KH of 0. And a GH of around 4 to 6. You want to get a nice layer of this in there. And it will look like it's quite a thick layer, but we need to have a decent layer of it in there to be able to do the job of buffering and not run out too quickly. So in combination with this active substrate, we're going to be using reverse osmosis water. Now, reverse osmosis water is water that's been filtered in such a way that basically everything's removed from it. All the chemicals, all the heavy metals. It's almost practically water in its purest form. And by doing that, you remove the KH, which is the carbonate hardness. Carbonate hardness buffers your water and stops your pH from moving as easily. By removing that, it means that we can drop the pH. So when you combine that RO water with the active substrate and maybe a handful of botanicals, it helps you get that water to become really soft and keep it there as well. So now that we've got the substrate in there, we're going to be using some of this. This is Milli-1 bacteria powder. It's by a company called SL Aqua. You do get other ones that are similar to this, like Bacter AE. But basically what these do is help build up a biological ecosystem. It can shorten the setup time as well when you're starting a new tank. And they say for shrimp, it can increase digestion efficiency, immunity, shell color, and shrimplet growth. Now, I use this in every Caridina setup that I do. It definitely makes it cycle faster. It definitely helps you grow those algae walls. And I do notice in tanks that I use this in, I get a better survival rate for my shrimplets. Now, you use this on initial setup, but you can also dose it every week or so. But when setting up a tank, just get some of this and you just try and evenly sprinkle it across the substrate. Now, some people have a different method of doing this. I've seen some methods where people will pile this in one place. This will also help with biofilm growing in the tank. But personally, for anyone looking at keeping Caridina, or if you already keep Caridina and you don't already use something like this, I do think it's worth giving it a go. That should be more than enough, to be honest with you. I might have gone a bit over the top there. But that's going to help kickstart everything in this tank. So let's get the tank back up onto the rack. And then now we need to get it filled. So let's get a sponge filter into there. Here's one that I've hooked up to the pump already. So this is just going to sit here on the back. So I purchased my RO in barrels from my local fish store. So this is just plain RO. And we're going to remineralize it now, ready for use in Caridina tanks. So the brand that I use is Drop. I found this to be the best in my experience, but there are other good brands out there too. Now, these barrels of RO I get from the fish store are 25-litre barrels. As it comes plain, we do need to add GH back to it, but this plain RO will have 0 KH and basically nothing else in it at all. RO is water in more or less its most purest form. Now, what I also like to do with my Caridina tanks is add something called Trace 1 shrimp. Now, I was told about this by a gentleman called GB Shrimp. Some of you might have seen him on YouTube and TikTok before. He helped me figure out what the best remineralizers and other elements to use were. And he recommended using this as it will support your shrimp's health and also just be good for nutrients for any mosses and plants and stuff in the tank as well. So I actually remembered that wrong, and I needed to add another 10 mil of the GH plus because it was actually 12.5 mil. I was remembering the correct amount for the Trace 1. And that's all done. And what we'll do as well is the old bubble wrap trick. Get a little bubble wrap in there. We can pour the water onto that, and then it will stop any of the murkiness getting kicked up from the substrate becoming unsettled. Come back in a moment, this will be full. That is almost full now. You can see that the bubble wrap's done a really good job. The tank is set up. Filter's running, and it's starting to clear itself up now. Hopefully, in the next 4 to 6 weeks, that one will be ready for some Caridina shrimp. But don't worry, you're not going to have to wait that long. It's going to be just a moment for you. But before we go there, I just want to grab some spiky moss that I've got in a pot in one of the other shrimp tanks and get that in there too. Hopefully that will also speed up some of the process, and it will just be able to grow in nice for when the Caridina shrimp will be going over to that tank. This is the moss that I want to put in there. This is spiky moss. I want to make sure that there's nothing shrimp wise still on there when we move it over. So we're going to have to make sure we give it a good shake out. in case there's any little shrimplets stuck in it. Because that's the last thing we want, is to get any shrimplets in there that aren't going to make it, because the tank is nowhere near cycled. Okay, so I would say that is all good. Let's get that moss added into here, and we'll just sit it down in front of the filter. Hopefully that'll get really nice and big and bushy. We'll come back when this tank is all cleared up. It's looking a bit better, and hopefully that moss has turned into a nice giant bush of spiky moss at the back. It's been about 4 or 5 weeks since we set the tank up. So let's have a look, see how it's getting on, see how that moss has grown, algae walls, etc. I do want to say, me being me, I completely forgot to film the first group of boa going into there. Don't worry, we do have some more boas still waiting to be moved over, so we'll get them moved in and we'll show you that process too. As you can see, that moss is doing really well. It actually was doing so well that I took a trimming from it and have put it in its own little pot to start growing another one. You can see the boas from the first group doing really nicely in here. And also there is a nice algae wall growing in here too. Looking into the tank from the viewing pane, this is just what we wanted. We've got those lovely algae walls growing in on the sides, and they're only going to get better as well as time goes on. But that means when we do start having more shrimplets from the breeding, they're going to have a great place to feed from, as well as that lovely bit of spiky moss there in the middle, which, as you can see, has grown really, really well. Everything's looking crystal clear. I'm really happy with the setup of this tank. It went exactly to plan. So let's get the rest of the boas in here. This is the old boa tank. It's got a nice bit of weeping moss in there. This tank's been going for a little while now though, and it's been set up since before the house move. It just could do with having a refresh. It's coming up to that point where with a Caridina tank, you need to do what we call a reset. So at some point in a tank's life, when you're using active substrate to buffer the pH, it will run out of those nutrients and the pH will slowly start to climb. And we're getting really close to that point. And in this tank are some of my most valuable shrimp. So I don't want to risk it. I just want to get these guys out and into the new tank. And then we can get this one set back up, ready for another type of Caridina shrimp in the future. A lot of these guys that we're catching now are actually metallic boas as well. So hopefully when they're in their new tank with a bit more space and fresher substrate, a bit of better lighting as well, their colours will really show off. So we'll see them in just a moment. I didn't manage to catch every single boa from the other tank, and I don't want to stress them out too much. We can always move the rest over later on. But we got probably most of the best ones from there. There's a lot of metallics in here, and these really are, I would say, probably the best shrimp that I own, or most of the best shrimp that I own. So I think this is going to look very nice when we see them getting added in, because there's going to be a lot of colour there and a lot of nice patterning. Because the parameters from the two tanks are the same as well, we can just add them straight in. Now let's get a closer look at some of these beauties. Some of these shrimp are just, they blow my mind every time I look at them. And metallic shrimp as well, they're not always the same colour. They don't always show the metallics every single day. Sometimes the metallics look stronger on other days. So this one here can be bluer than that sometimes. Other times you see it completely orange. It's fascinating to say the least. But these really are some superb quality ones, if you ask me. I'm very proud of owning these shrimp. So let's let those ones settle in. We'll pop back later on towards the end of the video and get some food in here so we can see all of them together. I think that's everything for this video. I hope I've covered most of the steps and talked about a couple bits for setting up a simple Caridina tank for breeding. It really is that simple. There's not a lot of steps, and there's a lot of information out there that can make keeping Caridina sound really, really daunting, like it's going to be a really complicated endeavor, and that there's going to be loads of things that can go wrong. And it's not to say that it's easy, but it's a lot easier than everything out there makes it out to be. And once you get past the initial setup phase, it's basically the same as keeping Neo Caridina. If there's anything that you think I missed, if there's any questions you've got in regards to setting up a Caridina tank, if there's anything you'd like me to elaborate on further in a future video, please leave a comment. And also, I think what we'll do for a future video is go through the process of resetting a Caridina tank to follow up from setting up a Caridina tank. A lot of it's the same, but I'll delve into the reasons we do it and how to do it effectively. I'll leave you with some footage of our lovely Boa Colony. Don't forget to hit subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.